So I'm going to introduce to you all as our next speaker, who's also an author. So there you go, Enrique. Enrique Zaldivar, who's author of Your Unique Cultural Lens, A Guide to Cultural Competence. And he's going to present on use of cultural self, exploring your unique cultural lens. Enrique is a managing partner at Inspired Inc., a professor of leadership, coaching, and organization development, and author, as I said, of Your Unique Cultural Lens, A Guide to Cultural Competence. He has worked with over 10,000 leaders in 50 countries in a wide range of sectors. His approach to consulting and coaching, inspired leading, as he calls it, emphasizes harnessing the creative energy between being authentic and being accountable. An aspiring, self-described Renaissance man, he practices Qigong and meditation daily, enjoys tennis, hiking, reading, and painting oil canvases, and is slowly learning to ride horses. That could be a painful lesson. And I'm with you on going slow. He is proud of his 2 mechanical engineering sons and baby granddaughters, and he lives in the Washington, D.C. area. Please join me in welcoming Enrique Zaldivar, J. Zaldivar.
Yeah. Thank you, Antoine. I do appreciate it. Can you all hear me? Good. Remind me to reach out to you whenever I need to be introduced in some other forum. That was wonderful. So thank you. I want to start by expressing my appreciation to whoever organized the order of speakers. I don't know if it's Kathy and Peter or whoever, or the whole team that did it, because it really worked out really well. I find myself, I have to be honest when I'm candid, when you are scheduled to be the last speaker, I know there are a few things happening after the break, but I think I'm the last one. And it's after lunch on a Saturday, after 3 days of conference. And that's not for the faint of heart. You know? It's especially, how does a mere mortal like myself can follow up the incredibly poetic, beautiful thing you did, Kate? I'm breathing deeply now. But you all helped me. Beginning with the very beginning. That was such an opening Mary Ann did. I watched it live. I couldn't watch Thursday, but I did watch the video, so I'm familiar with all that happened. The incredible work. Julian bringing up this tremendously valuable concept about the Jewish experience that Kurt Lewin experienced and how that inspired. The very insightful, I always learn when I hear Ed Schein speak, I always learn something, so that was terrific. But I want to focus more on today, because today was particularly helpful, at least to me. We started with Naima, who reminded us all that to be a whole human being, it's not just the mind. It's the mind and the emotion and the spirit and the body. And we need to pay attention to all those 4 domains. And so thank you, Naima, for that. Mel reminded us to pay attention to the children. You heard that I have 2 granddaughters, so I'm very focused on that. Kirod saved me about 10 minutes of presentation, because whatever he said about himself, I just simply say, same for me. I'm also an engineer, and all he said about 2 + 2 = 4 is me. So thank you, Kirod, for saving me that part. I really appreciate it. Shushma brought a connection and started sort of increasing the internationality that had been already part of the day. Edwin took us into a very intellectual journey that I found fascinating from his philosophical background. Norbert and Cynthia, again, saved me tremendous amounts of time because Norbert specifically said, well, Mexicans are the descendants of Spaniard men who ended up, and very politely, he said, marrying indigenous women. Some of the times it was not a marriage, it was something unfortunately more violent than that. But I am Mexican. I'm Mexican, I was born there, I grew up there, I come from a Mexican family, and certainly I have indigenous blood in me. I am a mestizo. We mestizos come in many shapes. I am one of the shapes. So thank you for bringing that. I felt welcome, and I appreciate that. Our DJ, I really enjoy my lunch with that wonderful selection and reminding us that music and the arts are so important to who we are. And now you, Kate, reminding us of the importance of telling stories. So I'm going to try to tell you a story from my unique cultural lens. The story begins with why am I here? So Peter reached out, Peter Norland, and I mean, I respect the man so much that just he reaching out, I pay attention, but then he also reached out with probably the warmest and loveliest invitation. It was signed by Kathy and by him to invite me to spend some minutes reviewing my framework for developing cultural competence, forgive me, the book that you just mentioned. They emphasize that the unique cultural lens, or UCL as we call it, was a potent example of the way Lewin's initial focus on groups, group awareness, and group level differences has evolved and has expanded. I'm very honored to be connected like that. And also how such perspectives are ultimately a necessary foundation to develop strategies to confront systemic injustice. And then they praise me for not just saying those things, but actually embodying them. That to me is a high standard. Whenever I'm working with colleagues, and I guess at the level of work that I do, all colleagues are competent. They all know their stuff. They know more than I do most of the time. Now, those who really embody, that's not too many. That's a shorter list. So if I am known as someone who embodies what I'm saying, and that's a tremendous honor that you will have this story. So thank you for that. Happy anniversary, NTL. Happy Jubilee. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. In addition to what I just said, the other reason why I'm here is because of the value that what I learned about me from the human interaction labs that I have attended. And particularly, I decided, well, if I'm getting so much as a participant, how will it be to be a facilitator? So I went through the NTL training to become a T group facilitator. I have never facilitated one, but I did go through the training. And that's what really gelled it for me. So I'm here to express gratitude and appreciation for a methodology that I have learned so much. I have recommended it to anybody that wants to hear me. I taught at the Masters of Science in OD, formerly known as the AUNTL program, Masters in OD. And I recommended strongly to every one of my students, you need to go and do a TGroup. It used to be mandatory to be accepted as a student, and for reasons unknown to me, it stopped being mandatory. But I think that's a pity. But I recommended it to everybody. The parallel experience that also formed me enormously is the Tavistock experience. I served for 6 years in the A.K. Rice Institute board. Again, as my way of paying gratitude for something that added so much to my life, my awareness of the group. That was just incredible, absolutely incredible. We ignore the group at our own peril, in my opinion. So being here means a lot to me. I'm very grateful. I will honor exactly the request that Peter and Kathy gave me. So we will talk about the unique culturalism. I just wanted to say this as a preamble to give you context of what I'm about to say. So I'll try to leave a significant amount of time. Hopefully, I will be able to do that for Q&A. Okay, so just bear with me when I share my screen, which apparently is working. And here we are. Can you see my screen? Yeah, good. Thank you. So this is a picture of the cover of the book that I was asked to talk about, the unique cultural lens. So if you can still see me, this is the book. So this is a focus on that. And by the way, I just want to clarify, because unfortunately I got a bit of criticism of people saying, Enrique, why did you choose a blue-eyed woman to be on the cover of your book? And it's not a blue-eyed woman. It's the map of the world. And if you look carefully at the picture, you will see that it is actually a map of the world seen from the point of view of the Pacific Ocean. And I'll talk more about that, okay? But it's not a blue-eyed woman. Yes, she is a woman, but it's not blue-eyed. So, so let's move on once that clarification has been. I hope in this bigger display you can see that it is the map of the world. I wanna start with appropriate background. I was happy to hear, I believe it was Barbara Bonker. Thank you, Barbara, for the wonderful presentation. Who reminded us all that the very first tea group happened in Connecticut. And I didn't hear every single word over the 3 days. So if this was said, I apologize for repeating it, but I didn't hear it. And I think it's really important to pay tribute to Frank Simpson, an African-American man who at that time was leading the Connecticut Interracial Commission that was created in 1943. And he is the one who commissioned Lewin to support the object. That's why the very first totally pilot program experimental first tea group happened in Connecticut. The goal of that particular conference was to elicit cooperation and try to educate people in a clear understanding of how people of different races, colors, and creeds can live and work together. This is anticipating Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. The approach was twofold: to help people live better, embrace democratic principles, which Lewin dearly wanted to support, and to treat the conference as an opportunity for action research. Hence, when we hear the stories on how the participants wanted to get in, I didn't know that, I learned that yesterday. They wanted to get in and they let them in, and that proved to be very helpful. This work confirmed that participants learn from self-reflection. And by the way, this, we are celebrating the 75 years, so it's in all our minds that NTL was founded in 1947. Tavistock was also founded in 1947. And they both were inspired by what happened in this workshop. So kudos to the Interracial Commission Connecticut. I already said that I'm an engineer. I work in engineering, I work in finance, I work in mathematics. So there are so few formulas. So if I see a formula, I'm going to use it. If there is a formula from one of our forebears, to me, that's very exciting. So in words, what's written as a mathematical formula, that is that behavior is a function of personal and environmental characteristics. And that is a huge insight from Dr. Lewin. Thank him. And the juncture between those two things, we are playing with that. We're still playing with that. So translating it and bringing it into the subject that we are talking here, which is how to be culturally competent. And let me define culturally competent. Culturally competent means the ability, the skill, the capacity to be effective, interacting, and actually influencing across cultures. And across cultures doesn't just happen when we move from one place to another. Across cultures happens every day, sometimes talking to our neighbors, because we live in an extremely diverse society here. I'm an immigrant. You are hearing the story of an immigrant. If that were not my story, I probably would be blind to the things that I'm saying here. But when you're an immigrant, you need to start paying attention. I'm sure you all here are smarter than I am. I have no doubt about that. What I do have is that I'm a frog from a different pond. And sometimes we frogs from a different pond can observe certain things that are invisible to the local frogs. Back in the day, the State Department has done a lot of work in how do we make our diplomats culturally competent. So back in the day, it used to be taught, let's say that you go and are assigned to France. We're going to represent the US in France. So we'll teach you about the French and French culture and French this and French that and what they like and what they dislike, etc. So it used to be teaching them tricks. Tricks don't work. Tricks has been widely proven. Not only don't work, but they do damage. A person with no training ends up being more culturally competent in a certain country, or whatever country, than a person who had been trained like that about learning tricks. There are books about these tricks. So careful. As I said, I'm a Mexican. Nothing upsets me more than someone trying to out-Mexican me. And it happens. I've experienced it many times. I hope you are appreciating what I'm saying. So what I'm posing to you is that the most powerful way is by managing this energy between being authentic and being accountable. And that to be able to do that, to be able to be authentic, we need to explore who we are. So it's a deep dive into self-awareness, into systemic awareness. So finding out what our 5 filters, our biases, because through those filters is how we see the world and how we interact with the world. I am interacting with you, seeing all of you, and sending verbal and visual messages to you through my own filters of all that I am, growing up in Mexico, and parents, etc., etc., etc. All my baggage, and then moving to the US, and then being married for over 30 years to a totally Irish descendant woman. So it all is part of my package, my cultural lens. We all have it. We all have biases. It's okay. But if we are not aware of our biases, that can be a problem. My wife, Suzanne, used to say that, and I say used to say because she unfortunately died over 3 years ago. I miss her very much. And she's the one who introduced me to all this. I was into the 2 + 2 = 4 world. And she emphasized that the goal is not to be bias-free, because that's impossible. The goal is to be bias-aware. What are my biases? And I have to say that Kate stole my thunder on this slide. Had I had more time, I would have changed the slide, but I didn't want to do something that would mock up the whole thing. But I'm surprised that she's in Aberdeen. I don't know if you're Scottish, but since you're in Aberdeen, I'm going to assume you're Scottish. A Scottish woman and a Mexican man decided to use the very same 2 people to illustrate a point. So I was going to ask you, who do you think this is? And then I was going to write it in Greek, and maybe some of you read Greek and would say Socrates, but since you already said it, and we are using the same quote, different translations of the same quote. And on examining life is not worth living. And then our second saying is Maya Angelou. Fortunately, here I'm using a different quote than the one she used. I love this poetic way she puts it. Aging is what happens by the passage of time. Growing is what happens when we are willing to wrestle our internal demons. I could not have said it better. And I'm going to add one more quote, because I said that there is a need for a tension between being authentic and being accountable. So the authenticity The point I'm trying to make here is that knowing thyself is not a new invention. It's accumulated human wisdom from millennia. In the 4th century BC, so 2,400 years ago, the temple to Apollo at Delphi had chiseled there in marble, know thyself. It's well-known ancient wisdom. And then this adds a different dimension. And I love the way Drucker put it, because it's not about how I make you accountable. He turned it around and he put it, we must seek opportunities to make ourselves accountable for. So to me, that's power. I love that. I know the word tension turns some people off, but I will argue that there is true tension between really being and acting authentically and being accountable. Accountable to what? Accountable to whatever you have committed to do. You accepted a position in a certain place, that comes with certain responsibilities and commitments. You enter into a relationship with another person, a marriage relationship, a monogamy relationship, you are making commitments to that. So how can we be accountable at the same time that we are being who we really are? Because if we're not who we really are, then we're just wasting time. So I'm going to make a little exercise, and I'm begging you all to go to your Jamboard that hasn't been used today, but I'm looking at the Jamboard so I can read what you write. And what I'm asking you is to please look at the picture that you are seeing there and write don't write essays, please. Just one word or maybe 2 words, a very short phrase. What do you observe? So what do you observe? You could write in your Jamboard, that would be fantastic. I'm looking at the Jamboard, but if I miss something, I would appreciate maybe Nelda or someone can help me to not miss anything. So what do you observe? It's a quick exercise, just a couple of minutes, please. Just type it in the Jamboard. I'm about to find out if Jamboard works. I have normally done this exercise when I do this work online on chat, and the chat box works very fast. So I don't know if there is a delay with the Jamboard. But I don't see anything here. So now I'm beginning to see some contributions. Let's have a few more, thank you. Whoever contributed this one. Antoine, thank you so much for your contribution. Can we have others, please? How do you observe? All right. One says disrupted line because of branch obstacle. The other one says, I see a wavy line on the road. What else? What else do you observe? One more minute, since we don't have that much time. I was told that I need to finish exactly at 3, so I'll have to move on. The line painter didn't want to disrupt the environment by moving the branch. So, thank you. So let's play with this. I was hoping for more, but let's play with this. I want to give you kudos. As I said, you are smarter than I am. Because you really paid attention to what I said, and I know you are highly trained professionals. I have done this exercise in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Latin America, in Canada, in the US, mid-level managers, high-level managers, people of all walks of life. And normally, if I am in the front of the room, I do it on a flip chart. And I try to distinguish between what are interpretations and what are real observations. What normally happens is that all I get are interpretations, and usually very critical interpretations. laziness. That guy didn't want to move the branch. Unprofessional behavior, very critical interpretations. And here you are happily surprising me with observations. Disrupted, the line painter. Well, that's an interpretation. The line painter didn't want to disrupt. The branch I want to move, that's both. Intentional obstacle on the path. Disrupted line because of branch obstacle. So, congratulations. But still, what I want to bring to your attention is the importance, and we have the ladder of inference to thank for this, between what is real data and what are interpretations. Because our brains tend to go to interpretations. So let's just keep that in mind as we move here. Because that's critical to understanding the culture clash that happens. We can see each other when it's about behaviors and practices. We think we're the penguins in one of these icebergs, and we see the penguins on the other iceberg completely safe. No, there's no danger here. But underneath, well, above and underneath, we start sensing emotions and thoughts. But when it comes to values and beliefs, we are about to crash, and we are not even aware that we are about to crash. And that tends to happen when we are not. So the next exercise, and let's see if we can do this one in 1 minute. Can you grab a piece of paper, a marker, a pen, a pencil, whatever you have at hand, and please draw a fish and then show it on the screen? I'm looking at pretty much everybody who is on camera here. So just come on camera, draw a fish, a quick sketch of a fish, please, and just show it to us. Show it on the put it in front of the lens of your computer. Excellent. Thank you, Tev. Who else? Janet, thank you so much. Dave, your background prevents me from seeing the paper, but Michael, I see it. Karen, I see your fish. Thank you so much. Lindsay, Dave, thank you so much. That is perfect. Karen, thank you so much. That's fantastic. So, what I want to bring to your attention is that this is an interesting study that was conducted with 10,000 kindergarten children. 5,000 of them were Americans, and the instruction was please draw a fish, and they basically did what you just showed me. They drew a fish. And then the other 5,000 kindergarten children were Japanese, and they were asked the same instructions, please draw a fish. And this is what they did. I'm not talking about the quality of the drawing. I'm talking about the fact that a fish floating in midair without a background has no meaning to the Japanese mind. There has to be a floor, a size. There has to be context to be meaningful to someone so high context culture as the Japanese. And we'll talk about cultural context in a minute. Just very quickly, a few perspectives. That, by the way, means China in Mandarin. And it's pronounced Chonghua, which is a sound that seemed to the original Europeans who traveled to China, it sounded to them like China or China, and that's why we call the country China. But the ideograms are quite self-evident. The first one means the center of the middle, and the second one means kingdom. For the Chinese, forgive me, they see themselves as the middle kingdom of the center kingdom. They see themselves as being in the center of the world. We consider them to be in the Far East. Look at the map, they are in the Far East. But is it really the world? I mean, the world is a sphere. This is just a representation. And it begs the question, why do we have Europe in the center top of the map? Why? I guess we know why. How about this map? This one has China and Asia in the center. Or how about this one? My Australian friends love this map. They tell me this is the way it should be. How about this one? This is a Hawaii-centric view of the world. Those of you from Hawaii may like this one. The United Nations in 1945 recognized the importance of map making. And to avoid any of the previous power grabbing that had existed through cartography, this is what it's. This is the today's flag of the United Nations, and they decided to put the North Pole in the center, at least far more neutral. This one, well, no matter how global NTL may get, don't worry about this one. This is a different planet, so we don't need to worry about that. But here we are back into what's in the cover of my book, which is a map of the world from a perspective of the Pacific Ocean. And I like this one. Well, two comments here. I really worked hard trying to find out this view of a map in English, and I absolutely failed. I could not find anywhere. And I did this a few years ago, maybe today there is one, but I could not find one in English. I only found, I found schematic ones, but really accurate map like this one, it was only in Chinese that I found. So something to think about. I like this map because it reminds us of the way the world is really connected. We tend to think that the Pacific Ocean is so vast that, well, that's the real division of the world. That's not true. The Atlantic Ocean is the real division. There is no connection there. Through this view, you can see that Russia and Alaska are so close. And there are all these islands that all of a sudden Australia and New Zealand don't seem that far away from the rest of the world, if you look at it from this perspective. So just to keep our mind, and now to talk about this concept of the cultural context. Cultural context is basically the rule, the unwritten rules that I need to know to be effective in a culture, to be welcome in a culture, to function effectively in a culture. And they are related to how all a civilization is. Remember here, low context and high context is not better or worse, it's just different. And the US and Australia are considered some of the countries that are at the lowest countries. It's very young. The US is a baby in the world. It's 250 years old. Japan is an ancient culture of thousands of years. India too. I mean, the chrysanthemum throne is 2,000 years old. The current emperor knows his lineage for 2,000 years. When we talk about Canada, I put it a bit higher because there is Quebec and the French influence and all that. You could argue the same with Louisiana, of course. And then this is a continuum. This is not an either or. So you have Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, certainly much higher context. And then you get Northern Europe and Southern Europe being higher context, the whole Roman culture there. Also very related to what Edwin was telling us earlier about historically, are resources scarce or abundant? That matters a lot. And in Latin America, you have places like Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, in which they largely, Spain, who conquered these places, they did the same thing that England did in North America. Basically, they committed the same genocide. So the cultures are very similar to the European culture. You get to places like Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and others, where the indigenous populations were highly developed. That was also mentioned earlier. When Cortés got to what's today Mexico City, which was called Tenochtitlan, that was a 250,000 people city. When London was a 100,000 people. And that was the largest city in Europe. Different places in the Middle East, in North Africa, certainly higher context places. Israel appears on both ends of this chart at the highest, because on the one hand, it's a millenary Jewish culture. At the same time, Israel, the state of Israel, was founded in 1948. So in some ways, the culture there is very young and very low context, and sometimes it's very high context. The Philippines is a mixture. There is this old joke that it is a combination of thousands of years of Chinese invasion of the Philippines, followed by 300 years of Spanish inquisitions and 50 years of Hollywood. And China, I have to put it in both ends because the Cultural Revolution, very appropriately named, Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution, in some ways turned China into an extremely low context, but it's still a 5,000-year-old culture. So in many ways, it's very. And an interesting factoid here the women in all the cultures are higher context than the men. Everywhere, the disenfranchised groups are higher context than the dominant because they have to at least be bicultural to function. I have to be a Mexican when I interact with Mexicans, and I have to be a mainstream person when I interact with the main culture. Low context tends to be very much about to do. What you do is what matters. High context is about being who you are. And this quote from Baldwin, you can read it. We need to face things. And that's where the unique cultural lens, and with this I'm going to end my presentation, comes into the picture. The book is it's an exercise book to help anybody who does it explore our own filters in all these different dimensions or layers that I call in the book. What's our heritage? I've talked a little bit about that. What's the expression? When we speak, we have an accent, and that immediately creates, when I hear someone from a certain accent, what does that tell me? I'm making assumptions about the person's intelligence just from the accent. Age. A lot of my clients tell me, how do we understand millennials? And now they are telling me, how do we understand the Gen Z? What are capabilities and disabilities, both mental as well as physical? What are educational levels? Educational levels can open doors and can become barriers. What are the different work identities? I mentioned to you, I'm an engineer, I work in finance, I work in mathematics before I move into this field. Faith pops as part of the cultural lens constantly. And it could be, is one more value or belief, but I separated them because it's so important for so many people that I wanted to highlight it. Gender and sexual expression is huge. We're in the middle of that. And the final one is social class, perhaps the biggest taboo in the US. The US mythology is that this is the classless society. So I just want to leave you with, if you are interested in the reference, I send it to Nelda. Nelda, thank you so much for putting it there. There is, if you want to use it, it's free for you to download. It's a summarized version of what's in the book. If you are interested, browse through the handout and at least pay attention to one layer that for whatever reason you think may be particularly meaningful to you. And the handout has all the questions from the book to help you do your own exploration of all the 10 layers or whichever layer you want. And if you want more details, well, you can find that in the book. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Enrique. I don't know about anyone else, but I have 1,000 questions spiraling in my head. Let's hear some of the questions from.
I'm going to put a time limit on it, Antoine.
Yeah.
And I beg your pardon on all of this. And I'm also going to beg us to stay because I certainly want our really wonderful presenter, Enrique, to have good time, but we will run over our time a little bit. And we do have a live presentation coming. And I'd also like to share our video. So I'm not taking away from Enrique. I'm asking us as a community to stay a little bit longer. And if you can't, I understand, but I'd really love to share. I think the committee is very proud of the work that we've done. Now, Enrique and Antoine.
Yeah, and following the same process, please put your digital hand up from your reaction so that we can monitor the order. You raise your hand.
So let me suggest that since we are so pressed with time, I commit that if you write any question in that Jamboard or send it to the organizers and they make it to me, I commit to respond to your questions in writing. I'll be happy to do it.
We can still take a few, Enrique. We're not gonna let you off the hook like that. Thank you, though.
Dave Jameson.
Yes, Enrique. I mean, thank you. You know how much I enjoy your work anyway. So, I mean, I'm happy to hear what you said today. What I wanted to make the strong connection with is you know how much I've worked on use of self and what the concepts are in it. And I think what this does is enriches a piece that's not talked about a lot. That is, we have a lot of selves inside of us, and we may not understand our cultural self as well. And so I think you've added a lot to, because I've found the same thing about other aspects of self-awareness. There's some that you can find a lot of work has been done on, and there's other pieces where a lot of work hasn't been done. So when we want to know our whole self, we have to figure out how to understand all of them. So thank you for that.
Mm.
Thank you, Dave. And I hope you noticed the title I gave to the presentation.
I saw that, yeah.
Exactly that. No other group in the world will catch when I call it use cultural self. Yes,
That's right. That's
about
right.
use of self in the way you just described. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much. I think we're going to take the risk to move ourselves along without any more questions, simply